Peace. What's good, YouTube? It's Kareem Samadi back again with another video. So today we're going to get into letting go of the payoff of negative feelings, right? And also letting go in general of negative feelings and how they color our perceptions, negative perceptions in our minds. So what do I mean by this, right? When it comes to negative feelings, a lot of the times we'll hold on to these things. We'll cling to these things. We'll cling to negative feelings, negative perceptions, just an overall negative reality that we know we want to, we consciously know that we don't want this to be our reality. We consciously know that we want to move past this. We want to change our own world, right? But we'll stay stuck in this mindset because we cling to a certain payoff, right? A certain part of us likes it, right? And it feeds off of it. And the part of us that likes it and feeds off of it is simply, a part of the ego that feels like it can survive off of it. So there might be consciously, you might want to let go of this, but subconsciously, or even with the ego might be sticking with it, and subconsciously that might be mirrored into the subconscious mind. So the thing that we got to understand is that it gets a certain payoff in it for quite some amount of time, and we may not notice this, and then as much as this continues to go on, we'll also drown within it. And so things like anger, hatred, fear, self-pity, resentment, guilt, pride, etc., there's a part of us that clings to these things because we haven't learned to properly let go of emotional upsets, or we haven't really grown out of our mindset that we have, right? It's all about your mindset and how much you cling to these emotional upsets, how much you cling to these feelings, right? A lot of people, right, when it comes to being scared of something, there's a part of you that wants to do that activity, even though you might be scared. You might have a fear of public speaking or something like that. There's a part of you that wants to do it, but you're scared. And so hanging on to being scared of doing things like that might hold you back. Hanging on to being scared of uploading a YouTube video showing your face might hold you back. It took me a while to begin showing my face on this YouTube channel. And that was mainly because I didn't have the equipment. But also when I did have the equipment, I waited a little bit, and in general, when it comes to fear, you might have a fear of approaching people, talking to people, being social. And there's a reason why you might feel like there's a certain payoff. That payoff of that fear and why you keep perpetuating it is because you feel comfortable not being social. You feel like you can be safe not being social. It keeps you safe. It keeps the ego safe. It keeps you in your comfort zone, right? The comfort zone is where a lot of people die in, because where you find comfort, you no longer find challenges. And where you no longer find challenges, you no longer find growth, right? So this is why they say the comfort zone is where dreams go to die, because that's real, right? When it comes to you not letting go of fear, you can never really truly grow, because you need to have courage in order to move away from fear. But at least when you have fear, you can acknowledge what the issue is, right? You can acknowledge exactly where you're trying to grow out from if you want to grow out of it. If not, you'll make excuses. So, and another thing is, with anger, right? We might hold on to anger because part of us feels like, hey, if I stay angry at this person, if I stay angry at this institution, if I stay angry at my employer, I get to feel like I'm right. I get to feel like I'm a victim. I get to feel like, I'm in the right by hanging on to the certain mindset. By hanging on to sadness, by hanging on to depression, we get to feel like we're right. We get to feel like the odds and the cards are stacked against us. What does this tell your subconscious mind when you begin to echo these things? Like, you might not be thinking it consciously, but really subconsciously. See, the subconscious mind doesn't process words, but it processes the symbols that you give it. It processes that repetition that you give it. So if you have this repetitive mindset of feeling like your depression and your anger is going to make you feel comfortable, make you feel safe in it, make you feel right in it, make you feel as if this colors who you are, this shows who you are, this forms the world that you live in, it forms the mindset that you live in, it forms the identity that you possess, right? And you know, when you have anger, and depression like that, that can really prevent you from growing, right? This is why, you know, when I was younger, you know, I did have someone in my life who suffered from depression, and I could just never really understand it. And I realized that they really didn't want to get better. You know, yes, they got therapy. You know, yes, they did all sorts of things, but part of them in their mind could not fathom a reality where they did not feel like a victim. Could not fathom a reality where they didn't feel bad, where they didn't feel sad, right? People with a lot of anger and hatred cannot fathom a reality where they didn't feel right in holding that anger and hatred, right? And that's tied to pride as well, because we'll stay stuck in certain mindsets with that pride. And that'll keep us from really seeing, okay, but what's the bigger picture here, right? A lot of these negative emotions, they keep you from seeing the bigger picture. Guilt is another one. Guilt will keep you from seeing the bigger picture because you're so focused on something that you did wrong, rather than focusing on, okay, I did something wrong, or something may have happened, or I feel like something was out of my control. Instead of learning the lesson from that, you begin to attack yourself for it. You begin to poison yourself for it because you feel like you're bringing justice to the situation by hurting yourself. It's emotional masochism, you know, mental masochism. And we'll do these things because we've been trained to act a certain way, right? Groomed to feel a certain way, groomed to feel comfortable in these mindsets, right? And going back to the emotional expression video, in the ways that we express our emotions, right? The ways that we express our emotions can determine whether or not we grow or whether or not we stay stuck in them. Because there's healthy expression and there's also unhealthy expression. Unhealthy expression comes in the form of you taking on certain mindsets and carrying them with you. You dumping your emotional problems everywhere that you go, with every person that you meet or every person in your life. You dumping it all on everybody else. All that baggage, it shows up, you know, in how you present yourself, how you talk, how you walk, what you do. It shows up, right? And this can all this pride that we have in this emotional baggage, right, can lead to resentment of others, resentment of self. And we can also develop a great amount of self-pity, just in general, like feeling bad for ourselves, rather than saying, okay, you know what, I need to get my shit together, I need to start moving forward, right? There's always an opportunity to choose or to hang on. There's an opportunity to choose to hang on or to let go of emotional upsets, right? There's an opportunity to choose and to hang on or to let go of things that may not serve you. There's always an opportunity to choose. There's always an opportunity to choose whether or not you are going to cling to a certain mindset. You are going to cling to a certain perception. You are going to cling to a certain thought process, a certain feeling. There's always an opportunity to choose. But the question is, are we willing to choose it, right? When it comes to a feeling of anger, are you willing to choose to let go of that anger that you might have against a person, against a place, against a thing, whatever it may be? Are you willing to let go of it? Have you considered the positives? Have you considered the negatives of letting go of it? And then the opposite is true too. Have you considered the positives? Have you considered the negatives of hanging on to it? See, this self-evaluation is key. This is why it's very important to process emotions rather than just jumping to the conclusion of venting them, jumping to the conclusion of suppressing them, you know, or repressing them, right? It's always beneficial to self-evaluate. It's always beneficial to process in private, right? In meditation, whatever works for you, however you process things. If it involves prayer, if it involves meditation, you know, if it involves journaling, whatever the case may be, how you process things is going to determine whether or not you can move forward from what's holding you back. And you always have a choice, and your choice affects your perception. Your perception affects your mind. Your mind affects your reality. Are you acknowledging the fact that you have a choice in how you feel? You have a choice in how you think. You have a choice in the perception that you have of your world, right? And what you present to your world as well. Are you acknowledging the fact that you always have a choice in what you do, right? And who you are, how you carry yourself. and inside the world that you've made within your mind? Are you acknowledging the fact that you have a choice to let go of things that do not serve you, to let go of the negative payoffs for the negative feelings, right? Are you willing to acknowledge that fact? Because if you're not willing to acknowledge that fact, then you'll always constantly feel like life is out of your control. You'll always constantly feel like, hey, people are doing this to me. This organization is doing this to me. The government is doing this to me. God's doing this to me. If my life weren't like this, then maybe everything would be a lot better. But it's not. You become a victim of your own thought processes. You become a victim of the negativity that you've been carrying around. And you think that everything outside of you is what caused it, rather than taking responsibility. And yes, there might be things that are out of your control, right? It's not a video game in that sense where you really do control absolutely every person, every place, everything. But when you control your mind, it starts to feel like you do, right? And the only way you can control your mind is by acknowledging the fact that you always have a choice in what enters it, right? Once you begin to control your mind, nothing's out of your reach. Nothing can bring you down. Nothing can really fuck with you like that, because your mind really does affect your reality. It does affect everything that you go through, but you might not even see it, because when it comes to that mindset of victimhood, when it comes to that mindset of pride, anger, hatred, self-pity, resentment, guilt, shame, whatever the case may be, apathy, depression, you don't possess the mindset to see beyond what's happening to you, to see beyond things that constantly pass through, even though you know that you're always constantly observing that and you're observing what you think is yourself going through that. But in reality, you're more than that. So when you acknowledge the fact that you do have control over all that, and you let go of that victimhood, you let go of the blaming, and especially the complaining too, right? Then you can begin to grow, because you'll never stay the same. You'll always constantly acknowledge, okay, I have a role in this. I have a responsibility in this. I have responsibility in how I proceed. I have responsibility in the choice and my perception. I have a responsibility in the choice of my feelings. And when I take responsibility, I take control. There's going to be a lot of challenges that happen, right? All the bullshit that happens to you in your life, it's all a mind game. If you ever read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, he says that everything that you go through in life is one big mind game. And so in this game in your mind, you have to learn how to control it. And as a result of learning how to control your mind, you also learn how to control your emotions. You have to learn how to control it. It's nobody else's responsibility to learn how to do that, right? And like I said in other videos, if you don't know how to control your mind, someone else will control it for you. Guaranteed. Why do you think you have all these woke movements, of people just gathering up and complaining? You know what I mean? Like, rather than them taking responsibility for themselves and for their lives and just taking full control. Why do you think a lot of protests happen but nothing changes? Right? Because there's no responsibility for people's minds. There's no responsibility for people's actions. They want to place it to something else. They want to shift it to something else. They want to blame shift, complain shift, rather than taking responsibility for, okay, what can I do right now to change my reality, to change my world, to change my mind, to make myself better, to take control, to take the wheel in life? What can I do right now? If you're not actively doing that, you can't move forward, right? The feeling of moving forward, gaining courage, forgiveness of others or yourself is always within you, right? It's just actively being resisted. And the reason why it's actively being resisted is because, like I said, that payoff, there's that cheap payoff that you get when it's easier to stay mad at someone because you feel right about it. That cheap payoff that you get, you become addicted to it. And we might not even realize it, but you can become an addict to that. See, just like there's physical addictions, there's also mental addictions, emotional addictions, right? That feeling that you get when you feel like you have full dominance, you have full control over your lover, right? Because you might have learned some tactics online to keep somebody in check, but you might not even see outside of yourself that might be hurting someone, right? But you get a payoff because you feel like you're in control, because in reality, you lack control within. And there's something else going on inside. Like, I had problems with that specifically. You know, I'm not speaking about anything in this video that I haven't gone through myself, right? A lot of what I've been talking about in this video has applied to me, right? Because, you know, we all go through different things, but I would never talk about something that hasn't applied to me in the past, or might not be applying to me right now, that I'm actively, you know, working on. So there's, you know, when it comes to these things, you know, we have to realize that the positivity within us is actively being resisted because we are addicted, emotionally addicted and mentally addicted to the payoff. Mentally addicted. David R. Hawkins talks about this in his book, Letting Go. And a lot of the motivation that I got for this video came from that, you know, from reading that. But we have to realize, because the mind is more powerful than the body, we are more than capable of practically anything. We are more than capable of moving forward from these negative feelings, from resisting the positivity within us. We are more than capable. I promise you that. I was more than capable of forgiving my father for not being in my life for about 17 years, right? More than capable, but I was resisting it for years. You know, I was more than capable for forgiving my mother, you know, for a lot of the things that she did that were not cool, right? I was more than capable of that, but part of me was actively resisting that for years. You know, I was more than capable of embracing the fact that I may have been wrong, embracing the fact that I used to be a liar to other people, right? Embracing the fact that I used to be a cheater. I was more than capable of learning from that, understanding that. But a part of me back then was so addicted to resisting it because, you know, it feels good to be right. It feels good to act like you're right. You know, it feels good to not take the blame. It feels good to not take the responsibility for who you are, how you affect the others around you, right? It feels good to really not be responsible in life. And so, and in that, you become a slave to your own emotional states. You don't want to be a slave to your own emotional state. You know, people who are sociopathic, people who are psychopathic, people who are narcissistic, you know, they are slaves to their own emotional states. The parts of themselves that they can't move past, they become slaves. And as a result, it reflects to the outer world. People who are in prison, right, for big crimes, for rapes, you know, for all different types of things, you know, there's a part of them that they could not resist, or that they actively resisted so much that their anger got shown to the world in the form of assault, in the form of murders. You know, their abandonment got shown in the form of rape, got shown in the form of kidnapping, got shown in the form of being a part of a gang, killing other people, right? Whatever the case may be, the self-hatred got shown in the form of being racist, right? And committing racial crimes, because obviously to hate other people means that you hate a part of yourself. So this is why a lot of people will end up in prison. A lot of people will end up in jail. But the thing is, some people won't end up there, but they'll end up in a mental prison, end up in an emotional prison, because they've actively resisted themselves. And as a result, they have blocked their chakras. They have blocked any opportunity of growth. And so, and this is what happens, right? They'll find things that attach to those like mindsets, and they'll follow them until the day that they die. You know, they'll basically find another cult that supports that mindset, that supports that feminism, that supports that red pill, that supports that, you know, whatever the case may be, really, honestly, anything that supports victimhood. Essentially, they'll find something like that to blend in, to feel a sense of belonging, because they haven't found it within themselves to really move on and let go. They have to find something to reinforce that feeling once that payoff, that cheap payoff, doesn't give them that high anymore. You see how emotional addiction, you see how mental addiction mirrors physical addictions, right? Just off of me saying that, you see how it does that to people, how it's done it to me in the past, right? And you can live your entire life and never know this, never know that you're a mental and an emotional prisoner. And when you're mentally and emotionally imprisoned, you're also spiritually imprisoned too. That's facts. So, and the larger and the more expensive payoffs, right? They come with letting go of the lower emotions that keep us feeling small, victimized, or static in life. Imagine if instead of embracing anger, we embraced happiness for ourselves, joy for ourselves. Imagine instead of embracing fear so much, we embrace the courage to achieve our goals, the courage to see greater than our situation, the courage to see greater than, feeling that you're just middle class or that you're just lower class, but to see greater than that, to see your potential that is greater than that and is not limited by that. And that everything that you are working for right now, even if you're somewhere that that isn't something that you want to do in your life when it comes to a job, right? But that you're actively working towards who you want to be, who you want to transform into, because the meaning of delayed gratification, right? What if we embrace all of these positive feelings instead of hanging on to negative feelings so much? What if instead of guilt, we change that guilt into lesson learning? What if instead of pride, we change that pride into humility, right? If we did these things on a daily basis and we really got in control over our minds and in control of our emotional states, nothing will be able to hold us back, right? There wouldn't be a lot of complaining about world peace because everybody would have came to peace within themselves. And as a result, the world would have reflected that. But see, right now, a lot of us, it seems like we have to actively work towards something as a whole, when in reality, as individuals, we need to actively work towards something. And that's facts. But with the constant reinforcing of, hey, we need to all do this together, and with the constant reinforcing of victimhood in movies, TV shows, songs, whatever the case may be, right? There's a constant reinforcing of victimhood. There's a constant reinforcing of ego everywhere, especially on YouTube, right? With all that comes the mind control, and what you buy into on a daily basis will reflect your reality. So it's so important to gain control of this part of yourself, right? It was important for me to gain control of this part of myself, right? When I was leaving the military back in 2020, I had a lot of physical discipline, but I did not have the mental or the emotional discipline. And a lot of that played into why I left the military in the first place, because I lost that mental and emotional discipline, right? And there was a lot of resistance, but a part of me wasn't really done. A part of me knew that I need to work on different things. And not just that, but there's other parts of my life where I might have done things that I wasn't exactly proud of as a result of the lack of mental and emotional maturity, spiritual maturity, when you combine both of those two, right? So we have to understand where we are at in this spectrum, right? And it's okay to recognize that you're a beginner, right? Because when you take the position of a student, you also take the position of a teacher at the end of the day. And when you bring yourself to the level of student, you open yourself up to a universe of learning. As much as I like to make videos, I spend more time learning than I do making videos. And the reason why is because I know that my growth is going to be infinite. And the more that I learn, the more that I grow, and the more that I transform myself, the better I can bring it back to you guys. And so this is why I want to say before I go, right? We have to master the mind. Point blank, period, right? When we stop resisting the positive parts of ourselves and we entertain the payoffs of the positive parts of ourselves, we are finally allowed to grow. We're finally allowed to let go of that trauma, right? And also to let go of that story that we tell ourselves, that story of where we came from, that story of how hard we had it, that story of how bad other people treated us, how bad the environments have treated us, how bad, our history is, whatever the case may be, the collective culture that we've grown to, especially in America, right? When we let go of all that and we just focus on the now, right? Instead of focusing on the past so much, especially when it comes to our history, when we focus on the now, when we focus on ourselves and what's going on with ourselves in our minds right now, then we finally start to heal from this sickness that's mental and emotional and spiritual sickness that we've had for so long. Start to heal from those traumas that we didn't even know that we added onto ourselves, or that we might have taken on from others, right? You know, there's a lot of stuff in place to keep you feeling like a little bitch in life. And so the minute that we begin to move past that is the minute we'll transform, right? But the more you complain, the more that you blame, you will continue to stay the same. Shout out to Steffes Gould for that whole entire saying, right? He always says that if you complain, you'll stay the same. So, and I agree with that, right? The more that we hold on to these things that don't serve us for that cheap payoff, the more addicted we'll become, and the more we'll begin to destroy ourselves in the long run. So, you know, it's always your choice. You can choose. You always have a choice in the matter. Just accept the fact that you have a choice. Because when you accept the fact that you have a choice, you also add more power to yourself. So we can start by doing that, you know, and when it comes to all the rest of the stuff that I said in this video, that's up to you, whether you want to choose to apply those things or not, or choose to learn about those things or not. So I'm gonna leave the link in the description to David R. Hawkins' book, and also David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me Too. And maybe you guys can get something out of those videos. All right. So I hope it inspired you guys, and I hope this video motivated you guys to really, you know, understand different parts of yourself, understand how to let go of that negative feeling that you might have been holding on to, the negative mindsets, perceptions that you might have been holding on to, and motivating you guys to grow stronger from that. I wish you all luck in your journey, wherever it may take you, and peace.